Rambam, we continue. We continue the book of Avodah, the book of divine service of the Holy Temple. We're in the laws of Psuli HaMikdashim, those things that make invalid offerings for the on the altar. So we're in chapter 17. Halach number 1. Whenever blood must be presented on the outer altar. Part of the mitzvah that has to be done, slaughter can be done by anybody of the animal, but the blood and putting it into a vessel and taking it and then sprinkling it on the altar, that all has to be done by a kohen, by a priest, right? So the blood must be presented at the outer altar. The first presentation was made with a proper intent, and the second or further presentation was made for the sake of a different sacrifice, or he had disqualifying intent with regard to the place or time. Atonement is achieved and sacrifice is acceptable. So listen what's happening over here. This is everything about intent, the laws of intent when it comes to bringing an offering. So the three things that make something not a proper intent. One is, let's say I was bringing an animal, and I was bringing it. The Kohen was bringing it as a sin offering, but I had in mind that it was a peace offering. That's a problem, right? Or if I had in mind that the meat of the sin offering, I'm going to eat it in 2 days. Right? That's a sin of not eating it in the right time. That's called pigul. That also makes it invalid, right? Because you're not eating it in the proper time. Or that I had intent to eat the meat, the kohen, who's doing the service, had to eat the meat because he eats part of the sin offering, to eat it not in the courtyard. I was going to eat it outside of the courtyard, right? Which is an improper place. Not that you did it. We're not talking about that you did that. Talking about that you thought that. That's intent. You thought that while you took the blood, presented the blood, you put the blood onto the altar. You just thought that. That's how careful, right, thought is, right? Kohen Gadol died year after year for many years in the Second Holy Temple because they didn't have proper thoughts on Yom Kippur when they were in the Holy of Holies. There, it's even more significant. But even bringing the blood, sprinkling it on the altar, right? Presented on the altar. So if the first sprinkle you did with proper intent, the fact that after that the other sprinkles you did improper, it's okay. It's a valid offering. I mean, the preferred way is obviously to have the proper intent at all times, right? But if you didn't, right? If you thought that you had it you did the first sprinkle of the blood on the altar for a sin offering, but then after you got confused, whatever, it doesn't matter what happened. We're talking about the parameter of the law. Afterwards, you were thinking, it was a peace offering that I'm now putting the blood on the altar, right? But it was a second. It's okay. You've achieved atonement through that sin offering, and the sacrifice is acceptable, okay? Why? Because the main is the first time, right? Okay. And therefore you don't have to bring another offering. Sometimes you achieve atonement, but you still have to bring another offering. In this instance, you don't, okay? Continuing number 1, if the first presentation was made with the disqualifying intent, right, with regard to the time, and the priest completed the presentation of the blood with disqualifying intent with regard to place, the sacrifice is pigul. Rashel's first presentation of the blood is of fundamental importance. So you had two improper intents. By the way, it's interesting. If you had intent to one second. You had intent to eat this meat, right? Let's say it was a sin offering, right? You had intent to eat this meat. There's two things. There's time and place, right? If you had in mind to eat it in a wrong place, so that is disqualifying that intent. right? But if you had in mind to eat it in the wrong time period, right? It's not only disqualified, it's called pigul. It's disgusting to God, right? Time versus space, and you are liable to have early death by the hands of heaven. They're liable for that, for pigul, which is interesting. Time rules over space, is more strict and stringent. So now, what happens if you had intent? The first spritz was the wrong time. The second and fourth, whatever, was the wrong place. So, which one is more? Which is, because if it's space, then it's not as stringent the law as if the wrong time, disqualifying in time. Remember, this is only intent, not even that you did it. You just had the intent. Right? That's how strict this is, right? No, you have to be very mindful. This is very, you have to really focus on what you're doing. Extremely mindful. Hold on a second. Yeah? Huh? Total focus, yeah. So I'm asking a question. What's the law? Well, we just learned proper. You did the first one, improper time. Second, giving of the blood, improper place. So it's considered pigul. Why? Because the first time is the most fundamental of putting the blood on the altar is of fundamental importance. The other times are not fundamental. So therefore we go by the first one. And since the first one was the improper time, then it would be called pigul.
If you do it always on proper time,
then it's worse. That's what we just said, right?
So all you have to do is on the first time. You don't have to worry about anything else.
Again, that's not the point over
No,
here.
I know. I'm just saying that's a wrong way of thinking.
Right. Okay, let's continue. In contrast, with regard to all presentations of blood on the inner altar. This was the outer altar. What's the outer altar? What goes on there? Sacrifices, right? What goes on the inner altar? Incense. That's a golden altar. Inner, what's inner mean?
Inside the sanctuary?
Inside the holies. Inside the holies, right? Come on, folks. This you got to remember already. Look, this is the outer one. This is the inner one here, right? Here's the altar inside. This is the holies, and that's the holy of holies, right? That's the sanctuary, and this is part of the courtyard, right? This was the Mishkan, right? Similarly, we have it here. Similarly, we have it over here. Here's the outer altar, right? Here's the inner altar inside the holies, right? And the Holy of Holies where is the Ark of the Covenant, right? Now, by contrast, there are times that you put blood on the inner altar. Since they are all absolute requirements for the offering of the sacrifice, as we've explained, we've already learned that, right? Now, the outer altar, what's fundamental importance is the first giving of the blood on the altar. The other ones are secondary, right? I mean, obviously you got to do it right, be mindful and do it properly. But if not, this is the parameter of the law. But in the inner altar, everyone is fundamental. But why? The more you get deeper into holiness, the more everything becomes crucial and fundamental, right? So much so that here you would get pigul, you would get on the other on the outer and inner altar, right? Just the inner altar is just every sprinkle would be considered fundamental, right? The inner of the inner, the Holy of Holies, even just extraneous thought is already not pigul that you get early death. You get death that year. They all died within the year. All Kohen Gadol's for decades. That's what happened. Because they weren't holy enough. They weren't proper. For decades. And the second Holy Temple happened that way. It was after Rabbi Yochanan, the high priest, who was for 80 years high priest. Okay, in contrast with so that everyone counts, right? If one of the presentations was made with was not made as required, but instead one had a disqualifying intent, the sacrifice is unacceptable, even if all the other presentations were made as required. Every presentation has to be done proper. That's halacha number 1. Yeah, we're good.
Yes.
Amazing. Number 2, halacha 2. If one of the disqualifying had a disqualifying intent with regard to time, when making the first of the presentations of the blood on the inner altar, and had no specific intent regarding the remainder of or he presented all of them as required with the exception of the final one, which he presented with disqualifying intent with regard to time, the sacrifice is disqualified, but it's not pigul. It's not given that distinction unless one makes all of the presentation with disqualifying intent with regard to time, for they are considered as one presentation. So here, right, it plays on the other side over here. When the outer altar, if you just had the first time the wrong intent of time, pigul, right? Early death by the hands of heaven. But on the inner altar, you had to have all the time that intent of the wrong time for each time you put blood on the golden altar. Why? Because it's considered one presentation. It's considered one act, so to speak. So it had to be the disqualifying intent throughout. If you only had it the first time or the last time, right? Not throughout, it's not called pigul. It's disqualified. The offering is not acceptable. You have to do the offering again. But it's not pigul that you would not be what?
That's
By the hands of heaven, right? Early death. Not just death, because death, could sound like there were times at the Kohen Gadol where they had a string around his ankle because he would die there, and they had to pull him up. So it sometimes happened.
Is it recorded how many times?
Yeah, actually, I think it is in the Gemara. I think it does. It gives a span of years, many decades, literally.
Aaron's son was part of it.
Aaron's son was a prayer. It was the first time. It was the first one. The first ones, right? Right. That's why, and that's why no Kohen could go in. That's why cousins went in to take him out because Aaron couldn't go in, and his son and the other 2 sons couldn't go on. Elazar and Isamar couldn't go in. Had to get someone else. Yeah. Okay. Number 3, having disqualifying intent while immersing one's finger in the blood of the sin offering, whose blood is offered on the inner altar, can cause the sacrifice to become pigul, was implied. In other words, you didn't yet even put it on the altar. All you did was immerse your finger to like spritz it on the altar. You didn't even do that. What does it mean? If at the time that the Kohen immersed his finger in blood, he had disqualifying intent concerning time, it's as if he had such intent when presenting the blood on the altar. Wow. Even just putting your finger in, right? Even though you have to, that's part of the mitzvah that they have to put the blood, right? Is putting your finger in. It's not just a prep. That's what comes out of this, right? If it was just a prep for something, so it's not the thing itself, it's only a prep to it. This is part of the mitzvah. Therefore, once you put your finger in, that's part of the mitzvah, right? It's not just that it's presented on the altar, right? That's put on the altar, but it's in the putting the finger. When you have the wrong intent, then that's disqualifying pigul. Okay. Number 4, if a kohen was standing in the temple courtyard and he had a disqualifying intent concerning time with regard to one of the sin offerings whose blood is offered on the inner altar with regard to an aspect of the sacrifice that he performed in the sanctuary, the offering is not pigul. If he has such an intent with regard to an aspect that is performed in the temple yard, it is pigul. So what's happening over here? He had a disqualifying intent, right, regarding the sin offering whose blood is offered in the inner altar. But he's not in the place of doing the offering, because where's it to be done? In the sanctuary. He's not there. He is in the temple courtyard, having that disqualifying intent, right, of something that's supposed to be on the inner altar, which is in the sanctuary. So therefore, it's not pigul. It's disqualifying. Well, let's see. We're going to see. Okay. Then we're going to see in a second. But if he had such an intent in regard to an aspect that was performed in the temple courtyard, then it is pigul. If it's something that is in the temple courtyard, well, he's going to say, what is implied? Well, what's the example over here of what we just said? If a kohen was standing in temple courtyard, right? Where's temple courtyard? Right? This is temple courtyard. This is the sanctuary, right? The kodesh, the holies, right? But he's standing over here. We're talking about there's some sin offerings that you have to bring blood and put it the inner altar. But he's standing here thinking of something that you got to do over here. That doesn't make it pigul because he's not in the place of doing it, right? If he was here, then it is, right? So he says, he was standing in the courtyard and he says, I am slaughtering this animal with the intent of presenting its blood tomorrow. Which you can't. You have to present it today. The offering is not pigul, because presenting the blood is performed inside in the sanctuary. Right? Got it? In other words, yeah.
How would the Cohen know that it's disqualified? How would he know that it is, like he would say?
You can imagine how honest a kohen has to be. Imagine how honest they have to be, right?
So, well, I just had, so he would have to like.
Imagine how honest it would have to be, right?
Those have been trained, very well trained, all the time, honestly.
They have 5 years. Well, that was the Levites, actually. Good question about, the training. It's interesting. I'm curious about the training period. Yeah, totally. Because it's not just training, usually training is about the know-how on how to do something. This is so much more. This is about how to make sure you're focused and doing, being mindful of what you're doing it properly, but being totally, wow. Ezekiel, but before you said, when we were speaking about growth, right? What did you say? Being focused and present. Look at this. This is, oh my gosh. I think I'd have trouble being a kohen. For God only made me a Levite. Oh my gosh. Okay, number 6. If a kohen was standing in the sanctuary and he said, I'm presenting the blood with the intent to pour the remaining blood on the following day, the remaining blood, right? Remaining is not part of the essential fundamental mitzvah, right? The offering is not pigul because he had a disqualifying inside the temple's sanctuary regarding a service performed outside. Right. He was in the wrong place because the remaining blood is brought on the outer altar. It's poured. There was like a stream that went through below the temple. The blood, that's where the blood was put over here. Remaining blood poured into a funnel that went and flowed outside of Temple Mount, a stream. So that's where it was. So, but he was standing over here, having in mind that he's going to pour over here tomorrow, which is wrong time, right? But it doesn't make it pigul. It's disqualifying, but not pigul. Why? Because he's not in the right. He's here having a thought about what he's going to do over there. You have to be in the space that you have to do the service. Okay?
This is all the thing.
What?
The timing is not correct as well, because he's thinking about tomorrow. So is it both space and time, or one or the other?
Sounds like just space.
Correct?
Well, I don't follow what you're asking.
Because you were saying earlier, correct, that we're dealing in terms of people who deals with space as well as time. So if he's thinking about doing something.
No, you have to be in the right space to be mindful or to having a disqualifying thought about that space in time. It's two different points over here, right? That's the point over here. Hold on one second.
So he was inside, but he's thinking of outside. So that's why it's not, he did it in a proper place initially.
It
But he
was,
thought
it was the
of
proper
the
place.
improper place.
So to me, it's like a proper place and a proper time, because it's tomorrow, but the proper place, because it's not.
But you see
Because he's on the right. Look, very simple. Look at the way you have to follow and look at the diagram. He's standing over here, right? Inside here, right? He's standing over here inside the sanctuary. He's in the sanctuary. That's what we said, right? Because he's got to put on the golden altar, right? But part of what he's got to put, he's not putting the whole blood there. Part of it is going into over here outside in the funnel that I mentioned, right? It's going down the stream, the remaining, right? There's a lot of blood that comes from an animal. Not all of it is put on the altar. The remaining stuff goes down here. But he had a thought that I'm going to do that tomorrow rather than today. He wasn't here thinking it to make it piggle because he's not in the right space to have the disqualifying thought in time, right? Because he was here rather than here. Okay?
he would have been outside.
If you would have had that thought outside, so then it would be called piggle. Yeah, exactly. Okay?
So space supersedes time.
No, no. There's both things you need to make it disqualifying. You have to be in the right place and have the wrong time. Right? Otherwise, it's not disqualifying it. It's not called piggle. Or it's disqualified, but it's not piggle. Right?
Yeah.
Okay? That's the point. Okay. Now, if, however, and we're number 6, okay? Continuing number 6. Second. Okay. If, however, he was standing in the temple courtyard, this is the temple courtyard, right? Here, this is the temple courtyard, right? You're standing there and slaughtered the animal with the intent to pour out the remainder of the blood on the following day, or to offer the fats of the organs on the following day on the altar, right? Which is, right? The offering is piggle, for he had a disqualifying intent while standing outside concerning a service that's performed outside. The service is performed here, and he had that thought here. That makes it disqualifying in the right space, having the wrong time, thinking of the wrong time to do either putting the fats on the altar or pouring the remainder of the blood, right? And therefore, that's called piggle. Is that clear? Good, excellent. Now that you got it, okay. That's it for today. Yeah. Now you can deflate.
Exactly.
Is your brain overburdened?
Very impressive.
It's a weight.
Very impressed by the Kohen. I'm very impressed by the level of holiness